Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssia Gehres, and welcome to the first episode of Education and Games, where we discuss all the ins and outs of combining games in educational settings. What else would it be, right? On today's episode, we will be discussing gamification, game based learning, board and video games, and the upcoming game based learning company, Edventures in Literature, all with our special guest, Tami Beneduce. Tami Beneduce is a fellow graduate student that I met through the Educational Technology Specialist online master's program through SUNY Potsdam. She is a high school English teacher, a newspaper advisor at her school, and an entrepreneur with a love for games of all kinds. Let's jump right into it and give a warm welcome to Tami. Welcome, Tami. Welcome. I'm so excited to chat with you today. Would you mind saying hello to everyone?
Hi, I'm Tami Beneduce. I'm an English teacher, and I'm so excited to be here today to talk about some games and gaming.
Yes, and I'm so happy to have you here on my podcast. First episode should feel special. So how do you feel about video games in general?
I really like video games. I had like the original NES Nintendo system when it came out, the first Sega Genesis. I really love kind of more old school retro gaming, Mario, Pong, Donkey Kong, Tetris, things like that. I run a pop culture enrichment class for students at my school, and that's really fun. We do a lot of like old school gaming and just things out of like the 70s, 80s, for them the 90s because that's retro for them too. But yeah, I love it.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like I mostly like grew up on like Nintendo 64 was probably the oldest like game console. Oh, and Nintendo 64 and the original Nintendo. I grew up on those and like those were my favorite. I feel like they don't nothing can beat the old, retro games. Like those are like I feel like those are like the all-time best games ever. Like I remember for the Nintendo, we had I think it was the Olympic Games one, and like you had the mat, and like you would have to like run on the mat, and it was one of my favorite games.
Yeah, there's something just very like nostalgic and beautiful about kind of the older games. Even like, I'm definitely a Nintendo fan. That's kind of my special, place in my heart for Nintendo. So even, I have like the Wii, the Wii U, but even on those, I'm playing like all the old school kind of games. A lot of my kids really love like, Call of Duty and, Grand Theft Auto and things. I'm like, no, I don't want to feel like I'm in the real world. Put me, with Princess Peach, let me chill with Donkey Kong. I love those old school graphics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, and like you said, there's just something so like nostalgic about it. Like, yeah, like I'm not like I've never been into like Call of Duty and all those like well other games like Call of Duty, I guess you could say things like that. Yeah, it's not my thing either. Like you, like I'm more into like getting away from the real world and just like in my own dreamland and type of thing.
Yeah, and the video games, like there's such an interesting history behind them, and we do a lot in our pop culture class, but even in my 10th grade class, we do like the hero's journey, and then we do dystopian literature. So we do Ready Player One, we do the book, we do the movie, and they talk a lot about old school retro video games, and they have, of course, one of like the big Easter eggs that they talk about is adventure and how it was like the first Easter egg in a game. So I pull up adventure and I show the kids, and they're just like minds blown. They're like, what is this? Because it's literally like a dot, right? That's your knight, and you're moving it, and it's like the things are picking up. They're like, I can't even tell what you're doing. It's so crazy. And I'm like, no, you don't know. These things were like revolutionary back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is really yeah, because like kids nowadays, they're like you said, they're like, "What's this?" It's like it's because it's so crazy to think about how like back then we were just like, "Oh, this is so cool," and then like things keep evolving, and kids like some kids like yours, they think, "Oh, like those games, like those retro games are like so cool," or some kids are like, "Oh, like why would I play a game with those kind of graphics?" But meanwhile, like those are like amazing.
Mhm.
So now that we've talked all about video games, let's jump right into board games. So now, how do you feel about board games?
Oh, my heart belongs to board games. I love board games. When I was a kid, I would play a lot of like Monopoly, things like that. And I would play Monopoly, like days long sessions of Monopoly, because that could last forever. And what was
Oh
really
yeah.
kind of sad is I would play it by myself with my stuffed animals. Poor Five-O Mousekewitz, who still sits next to my bed, has played many a game of Monopoly with me. And then like now, I mean, my place, my tiny little place in Brooklyn is filled with board games. I love them. I really love, trivia. We have a lot of like different versions of Geek Out, the logo game, a lot of Disney stuff. I'm really big on Disney. Of course, Pictionary, some basics. And then we got like Encore, where you sing these songs. I really love like escape games. So yeah, we just, they're so awesome. What's tough is it's only me and my husband. So finding a two-player game is rough
Mhm.
on a board game. Usually it's like for three or more players.
Right, yeah. Oh, it's so nice to talk to another, board game lover. I feel like I don't encounter many these days, and when I do, I'm like, finally someone who gets it.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I try to actually instill a love of board games in my students because like when we do like the pop culture class, I buy all these games, a lot of old school ones, and it's so fun to see them because they'll put their phone down and they're just like totally into it. And then like especially like, oh my God, they love Operation, which is always hysterical to me. They put the little thing and they're like, ah, I'm like, yeah, like you have to be tough back in the day to play these games. Like you'd be getting electrocuted. Perfection would like, give you a heart attack the way it would jump out at you. And like it's really fun to see it, and it just brings like so many people together.
Yeah, definitely. Like, my dad growing up got me into, board games. Like, we'd always have like board game. We at least play a board game maybe like like once a day basically. So like, so that's 7 games a week basically. So, we played
Yeah.
Memory Game, which is my all-time favorite, and I relate that to, well, I thank it for my memory today because I noticed that I remember some things that others don't. I know, of course, Monopoly, fan favorite. um, Mastermind was another one of my favorites where you had to like guess the person's pattern that they were created with the colors. And there was this, I wish I remember the name. There was this space game. There's really like a really, really old game. I don't remember when it came out, but I think it was called like Interstellar, and like you had your own like rocket ship, and you had to like fuel up at various like fuel stations, and you would go different planets, and it was just the coolest game. But then we had termites in our closet, which is where it was stored, and it ate it, and I was so upset because I never got to play it again. But I've been debating looking at eBay to buy it.
Yeah, no, I do that all the time. And it's so funny because you think about these games like from your childhood. And, I'm a child of like the 80s. Like I was born in 1980. So I always feel like I got the best of both worlds, right? Because you got really like the 80s, 90s were awesome. And now we have all like this new technology and stuff. But we would get like the games and it would be like Mousetrap where you had these intricate things or like Girl Talk and Mystery Date. And the phone would like ring and you're like, oh my God, this is like the most amazing thing ever, right? So it was an interesting balance of the different types of things they have. And then, I grew up with my grandma and my great grandma and my grandpa, and they were all huge Scrabble lovers. So it makes sense that I became an English teacher because we played a million games of Scrabble like every single day when I got home from school. So yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. That's awesome. And you just reminded me about Mousetrap. I totally forgot about that game. I used to love putting them together and seeing the little, I'm gonna call it a laundry basket, a laundry basket come down on top of the mouse.
Yeah, they're so intricate to put together. And then like, because even then they had like Marble Madness. Like I love these things that had like kind of these intricate pieces. It was just like a whole other dimension. It was super cool.
Yeah, and it was so like imaginative and just so creative. It really got you like, it just really got you thinking, and like I feel like with these types of games, like I feel like we were never bored.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just like you're right. You had to actually think about it. And then you had like, the community, the collaboration. Like it was really fun. Like I don't know. And like I said, like because I still see it with my kids today. Like at first, like they may grumble a little, and then like the second they start playing, they just get super into it. And it's like being in another world.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes, exactly. So I know you said you used board games in your classroom, but have you used like any type of like video game, or I guess any type of virtual game in your classroom?
Yeah, so, of course, like when we first started playing games and things like that, I always kind of went more like board game style, and even like, like games that I created, like, like pen and paper escape rooms and case files and things like that. And then we do like board games like, cat crimes and stuff when we do our rhetorical appeals lessons. But when we transitioned to virtual learning because, of COVID and everything, I had to kind of really figure out how to move everything into a digital realm. This was not my forte. I had no interest in technology, terrible with it, terrible with computers. But I love to learn. So I went deep, deep down the YouTube rabbit hole and spent a million hours learning everything and figuring out how to kind of incorporate games and play all these different types of things and build these games online. So of course you have like your basics that like I think a lot of people kind of do as go-tos for video games in class, like a Kahoot or a Quizlet, or even like GimKit nowadays is like a little bit more advanced than those kind of basic quiz games. But I really build out my own most of the time. So I'll build out virtual escape rooms and like kind of virtual tours and puzzles and things like that that the kids really, love to play.
That's so awesome that you were able to use like such a, I guess like difficult, but also like eye-opening time for everyone to, create something creative. Like you learned a new skill basically, and then you came up with these escape rooms and all these games. Like that's so awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. No, it's totally fun. And like, my friends make fun of me because they're like, you hate technology, you love dystopia. You're always like, oh, the robot overlords are gonna take over and watch out. Like, they're gonna come get you. And they're like, there you are, deep in like tech, and like, oh, now you're going for a tech degree. Like, okay. Yeah. No, but it was great. I took the opportunity to really learn something new, and it's been fantastic because now, even back in the classroom, we do that in person. We still do my virtual stuff, and then we do some hard gaming stuff too, and it's fun.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm so glad to hear like you have like such a positive experience with incorporating these types of games in your classroom.
Yeah, I have to have fun. I can't. I'll go crazy. It can get boring real quick. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah. If there's no fun incorporated into learning, then it's just like a drag. And then it's just not beneficial for anybody at that point. Um, so have you seen like some benefits by utilizing either board games or video games in your classrooms for your students?
Oh yeah, I've seen tons. So with both types of games, there's more of a like camaraderie and team effort. The kids get along. I feel like better together. They work off of each other's strengths, and there's like kind of like a mutual respect, and then there's like a fun little competitive edge. That they kind of play around with each other. And then aside from the engagement, which is really really important, you want them to like be into the stuff and want to learn. Aside from that, just getting them, a lot of these games really get them thinking. And the critical thinking is super important, especially for English class, right? And the communication skills that are involved with it. And then because of the types of games that I create, it also mixes the material we're learning in it. So I also see the benefits and how it improves their scores like on tests and things just from doing the work in the class.
Wow, that's great. I love to hear things like that. Awesome. So you've seen the benefits. Have you like encountered any struggles along the way, like in your classroom with utilizing these types of methods?
So I think the biggest thing when it comes to incorporating any types of games, whether you're creating them or you're bringing in like ready-made stuff, and whether it's virtual or like a regular like a board game style, is figuring out like your pacing and your timing. I have very short classes. Our classes in my school are about 40 minutes long, and for an English class especially, that's very short. And I'm also I'm spread out between 4 different rooms. So I have my cart and I'm constantly running from room to room and my things
Oh
are
my
falling
goodness.
apart. And when I have like on game days where it's like, actual games, it's like chaos trying to run from room to room, clean it up, things like that. Also the prep time, I talk to a lot of people because the teachers will be like, oh my God, like the kids are talking about like these fun things you're doing in class and that's so awesome. And then they'll be like, how do you do it? And when I start explaining, they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's great. We're gonna, they get a little nervous, right? And a little intimidated by like, I mean, for me, I feel like it's more like of a front loading that you have to do. Of course, if you're creating stuff, it's heavy on the front loading and behind the scenes work that you have to do. But I feel like once you are in the class and they're doing it, I mean, the kids really just like take the reins and it's so nice. And you can just like kind of walk around as observer, help out if anyone needs anything. Yeah. The benefits definitely outweigh any of like the problems that can arise, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree, honestly, because of course, like I feel like there's struggles with like any type of learning technique or method, but it's always like great when, like you said, like the benefits outweigh like the difficulties. Okay, so now that we've talked about, video games, board games, and incorporating them in your classroom, now we're going to talk about the instructional method of gamification. So, would you like to defining that for our listeners who may not know what gamification is?
Sure. So, from my understanding, gamification is really taking kind of these game elements and applying them to your learning environment. So, you'll have like leaderboards or, point systems, reward systems, things like that. And that becomes like the gamification aspect of it.
Right, excellent. I couldn't have said it better myself. Great. Okay, so have you used gamification in your own classroom?
Yeah, so I do it all the time. My classes are fully gamified from day one of the school year. We go into teams. Our school goes in quarters. So every quarter, we have new teams. So the kids all work with each other throughout the year. And they will, in their teams, choose team names. And I create different leaderboards that are themed to whatever it is we're learning. So when we do our dystopia unit, we have Ready Player One. I have a virtual scoreboard, right? It's called the scoreboard, just like in the movie and in the book, Ready Player One. And it looks just like they have it kind of set up in the movie. And you see the teams, and as the different teams advance, the scoreboard kind of changes. Same thing, when we teach Beowulf or whatever, it just looks like now the board is like a Viking longship and it's moving across, right, the ocean and things like that. So I always have their leaderboards. And then we also have kind of a points system that feeds into those leaderboards. So for different activities, they get different amounts of points, and everyone in the groups have to be held accountable. So that runs in different ways. So we have like our major activities, like when we do a virtual escape room, that goes for time. So the team that finishes first, gets a certain amount of points, puts them in first place, right? But then we also have things like, okay, technology doesn't, the phones and stuff don't drive me crazy in the classroom. Like that's not the hill I'm going to die on. I tell my kids all the time, that big tech put a lot of money into getting you addicted to your devices, and I do not have trillions of dollars to get you unaddicted. So it's not like, it doesn't make me nuts, but there are certain activities and things that I'm like, today is a no cell phone day, so I have like my cell phone holder that I'll bring in and I'll schlep it from room to room with me, this big thing. And the kids know, I'm like, if you choose to put your phones in there as a group, everyone in your group has to do it in your team. And then you'll get like an extra 5 points, right? If you don't choose to, that's fine. But if I see any phone out in your group loses 5 points, right? And then your phone goes in phone jail, so they have like different kind of systems, but it makes them really take ownership for themselves, and it makes them really accountable, because then you'll see them tell like other people in their groups, like, no, like, give me your stuff, come on, and they'll be like, you do this work, like, you got to do this, and we have to get on the leaderboard, look, you're gonna let them beat us, so yeah, I definitely use the
Oh,
gamification elements. Yeah.
oh, I like that, because it seems like from what you're describing that they're really like they're engaged and they're like motivated to learn.
Yeah. No, it's great. And you don't listen, I'm in high school, I'm in an inner city high school, you don't get every kid, but for the most part, like they buy into it, they like it, and even the kids who are kind of grumbling will come around and find a piece. And that's what I love about the gaming style of stuff, is there's something for everyone. So working with those kids, I see like where their interests lie, what their skills are, and then I'm able to find something that kind of suits them that I know is going to pique their interest, and then I win them over.
Okay, nice. That's great. So, so would you say like your biggest struggle with utilizing gamification in your classroom like has to do with the students who may be like hesitant or like you said like grumbling to, I guess, participate, or is there something that has been a bigger struggle for you?
I mean, I think the buy-in, the number one comment I get is that the kids tell their other teachers that they've never had a teacher like me. They're like, oh, like this person's coming in and they're doing all these like gamified things and these game-based things. And, it's just very different from what they're accustomed to. And some of them right off the bat are like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, look at how great this is. And some of them are like, oh, why can't you just do things like the normal way? Like, this is so extra. Like, miss, you're so extra, right? But yeah, so I think, it's new to them, because they haven't really seen it before. Like you'll have a couple of teachers who will do, like I said, they'll play like a Kahoot or a Gimkit or something like that, but they don't like have like the full out, system that I have. But usually by the time we're a couple of weeks into the first quarter, they're into it. They understand what's happening. They kind of see the method, right? They like there's like prizes and stuff, so it kind of fixes into there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome. I'm glad that you like having such a positive experience with using gamification in your classroom. It's always good to hear like, all these success stories.
Yeah, no, it is. It's been successful. The only thing, I mean, I think the hardest thing for me personally is I'm very chaotic. So, and I live in like a vortex of chaos. So I'm really bad with like structure and routines, right? So like I'll get off to a great start with them too. Like, yes, okay, the points and I got the thing and then like you start to realize like, oh man, I haven't added these things up in a while. You have to like stay on top of it, like the points, and you have to have a system. Now I started this year, I made like a back end system for me, and sheets and stuff to track everything to make it easier. But yeah, you have to kind of just be on top of it because the kids will call you on it. They'll be like, oh, what happened to this point and what about that? Yeah.
Well, that's good. Kind of like remembering for you. So you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like I gotta go do that.
Yeah.
Your personal reminders. Okay, so since we've talked about gamification, now let's talk about game-based learning. Would you also mind defining this for us, for listeners who may not know what game-based learning is?
Yeah, so game-based learning, oh, I love game-based learning. It is basically now you are learning that's the game as the tool for learning. So it's not just like, gamification is like a reward system, a motivation. It's like kind of these elements that make it kind of game-like, but now you're actually using it as a tool and it's incorporated in the learning itself. So like I said, when I make my games, my escape rooms, my different type, my virtual case files, things like that, they're actually learning within that. So even if we do one that's like towards the end of a unit, where you have like it's almost a like a culminating activity, right? Like, oh, the Beowulf escape room, and you have to go through and answer all these questions, kind of like a final exam, but in game form. But they're also learning things through it because within that, now I've also put in the Seafarer, which is like an old English poem that they've never seen before. And because they picked up all these other tips and tricks along the way throughout the game, they're now prepared to attack that poem.
Okay, yes, excellent, perfect. Thank you. So we know you use gamification in your classroom, but what about game-based learning, which from what we've spoken about, I feel like you do.
Oh my God. Yeah, a ton, a ton. I mean, I really love, that's my favorite thing is developing games. I'm very creative and that's just, oh, I wish I had more time because there's so many ideas always going through my head. In my bedroom, I have like this giant whiteboard. I feel like Sheldon Cooper in The Big Bang Theory, how he has like these whiteboards everywhere. And I have one in the bedroom, on the closet, and I'm always like, writing down things and I'm mind mapping and stuff for all these games and things I want to create. So yeah, I mean, we use a ton of them. Like I said, there's ones out there already, like you can go into like WordWall or, all these different kinds of styles of pre-made things, but there's just something beautiful about knowing your students and knowing the different things they're into and knowing your own material and how you want to like turn that into something. So, like I'll make different types of pieces where you'll have like a maze and they have to like take them through the maze. And as they go through the maze, they have to pick up letters. And when they get to the end, like the letters will unscramble to form, one of the Anglo-Saxon values, as exhibited in Beowulf, wherever, and they have to figure that out. And then there's other ones that are like, I do a lot of riddles. I love riddles. And I love rhymes. So, I'll make ones. I have like name that god, right? In my intro to Anglo-Saxon virtual tour, intro to Anglo-Saxon life. And it'll be like, describing in like a little 4-line rhyming riddle. It describes like Odin and Frigga or whatever, and they have to figure out who it is and based on things they've picked up there, because I don't stand in front of the room and teach them that stuff first. They have to discover those things within the game.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I like that. So it's kind of like it's like an intro before like what they're about to learn type of thing.
Yeah, so like I do that like so with my sophomores. I'll do that like my ninth graders, when we do Midsummer Night's Dream. So same thing, I'll do a virtual escape, not a virtual escape, virtual tour of like Shakespeare and like a little of his like background or whatever, but like really the stuff leading into the story. So they need to know, the story is a play within a play, and they're talking about this whole grand play about Pyramus and Thisbe. Well, you're not going to understand that Pyramus and Thisbe is just like the problem that they're having like with Helena and Demetrius and stuff, unless you know who Pyramus and Thisbe are. So within there, they're learning about, the stories, they're learning about, what do you call it? Theseus and the Minotaur and the different gods and all the different things, where the origins of Puck comes from. And they have fun. It's like a fun little romp through the forest that they take virtually, and they learn a bunch of things and play a bunch of games. And like half the time they don't even realize what they're learning. And then they get to the end, like, oh my God, I know all these things.
Oh, okay. So would you be able to, like, I know you like kind of like briefly like told us what one of your like virtual tour consists of, but would you be able to go into like more detail of like what is included in your virtual tours?
Sure. So like, okay, so for when we do the Canterbury Tales, I have a virtual tour that leads into that on like medieval England, right? And like the different things. So within that, they go through and I do a lot of, I'll make like a 360 tour. So, they're actually able to go and they can like move and spin the room around and they click on different things and the different things. Oh, there goes my baby. You hear her. So do you hear my dog? Leia. Sorry. There must be someone at the door. So they'll go through and then those take them to other rooms that, spin around and stuff. So they have a lot of exploring to do. And they like that aspect is actually really cool. And if you have like the virtual headset, you could actually like see it like in virtual reality. So it's pretty cool. So part of it will take them to a tour of in Google, what do you call it? Google, like a Google Maps tour of, Bram Castle, Castle Dracula. It'll take them through, a couple of like Windsor Palace, like things like that, a medieval village. They go and they watch a video. There's this YouTuber. Oh my God, he's so cute. He's like 10 years old and he does everything with Legos. Like he makes like full like Lego stories and stuff. And he does the whole story of Thomas a Becket and how, he gets killed and then, how Canterbury plays into it, because in the Canterbury Tales, they're going to pray, at this place that's like, sanctified. So it like leads into that. It's really cute. And they go through and, like I said, I have for that one, I think I have a maze. I have a puzzle that they have to go in and virtually put together, and the puzzle leads them to a clue. So I make a like a locks page, and on that locks page, after every activity, it's like, congratulations, you got, huzzah, you got your code. And they put it in, and when it goes in, it takes them into the next space. So it's progressive. So you have to do each thing. But what's nice about it is when they're working in groups on these, because I'll typically put them in groups, and let them work together with it, is that they can divide and conquer to help save time. So they can go in and work through the different activities at different times, but they can't progress through the lock page until they've hit, like activity 1, 2, 3. So like you could be like, I'm on deck, I have activity 6 done, what are we doing? And you're waiting for the people. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many different things. I have like a one where it's like a magnifying glass, or a moon in my Hobbit one. It's like, uncover the runes that Thorin was looking for by the light of the moon outside the dragon's cave. So it looks really dark, and there's a moon, and you can move the moon around, and when you hover in the right places, it'll start unveiling runes. And now I have a key in there that teaches you how to read runes. So now they have to decipher the runes as they go. So it's actually, yeah, there's a lot of different types of things that they can do.
Wow, that sounds so awesome. Like, I wish I was in your classroom. Like, I wish I was a student of yours. That sounds incredible. So what do you create like these virtual tours with? Like, what programs do you use?
So I use a million different things. When I was trying to figure this out, I had ideas of what I wanted to do, but I didn't know, like, well, what am I going to use to make them, right? So as I start going, you start digging through YouTube and looking up different types of things. You can look up virtual escape rooms, things like that. There are teachers out there who make virtual escapes. Using different types of programs. Like some of them do it through Google, and they'll use a Google form, which is what I did when I started, because I was like, oh, this is easy, great. But the problem with that was I had a lot of teachers and things, I'm in a lot of groups like online for different types of English teacher groups and things. And they were like, oh my God, like, I love your stuff, because we share to each other, and they would want to use my stuff. But the problem is, on a Google form that's attached to my account, their kids can't access it. So I was like, there has to be a better way. So I kept digging around, and I found a program called Genially, which is like, I love that program. Like, if I could have one program in my life, that would be my program. But the problem with Genially, now it's getting a little bit more popular, but it's not that popular in the United States. Like, a lot of people don't know about it. Nobody I ever encounter knows what Genially is. I'm kind of like out there, like, hey, I'm singing its praises. But it's a program that's kind of like, I always say, it's like, oh, it's like Google Slides on steroids, right? It's like you can make these kind of epic presentations, and you could use it. They have different types of setups for like quizzes and templates and things like that. But it also allows for coding. So you can go in on the back end and code it to do different types of things. And they've partnered with Sandbox and Scape Tools, which are, one is a Spanish company and one is a French company. And I do not speak Spanish or French, but I have spent countless hours watching videos in Spanish and French, and just like kind of watching and trying to follow and see what they're doing and figure it out. So through there, then I started to realize and kind of play around and figure out how to put things together. And then I do a lot of like app smashing. So what I like about Genially as a base is you can bring in and embed kind of different apps and stuff. So I'll mix it with book widgets. I like a lot. Book widgets is it's great for like creating. They also do like kind of online quizzes you can do, and different types of worksheets, different styles of ways of putting in questions. By itself, I don't love it because it's not pretty. But it's not pretty. It's also not super user friendly. You need a little bit more time to play with it. But when I couple it with Genially, it becomes gorgeous, right? Because now you've opened up some new features, like new feature unlock. ThingLink I use to host everything, because that's what allows me to put it in a 360 environment. So ThingLink actually lets you like upload 360 images so that you could view it in there, and I could build this stuff out in Genially and put it in there. So that's another big one. When I first started, I did a lot with Google Suite because that's kind of where people tend to start when you're doing these things, because there's so much information out there on it. So I would do like pixel art and stuff like that. But again, same issue, it's great if it's for your own room, but if you want to let other people use it, you run into some complications there. So yeah, so like my main ones are probably would be Genially, Book Widgets, ThingLink, and I like learning apps also. There's like certain activities that I put in my thing that learning apps really lets you use certain pieces that other ones don't have, that just make it more fluid. And again, when I mix it with Genially, then I can make it pretty and cute, and then it's much better. Yeah, but there's a ton. I actually have a whole spreadsheet that I put together of one tab of all the Genially coding that you could use and what each code does, and then another one of all the apps that you could smash with it.
Wow, you got it all together, girl. You got it all together.
Because I'm all over the place. People are always asking me about things, and I'm like, yeah, do this. They're like, so like, wait, I'm gonna make you a document.
Yeah. Wow, that is so awesome. I'm so interested and intrigued.
And there's a lot you could do for the littles. Like I know, you have the littles, right? The littles, right? The babies. And
the little babies.
Yeah, there's so much you could do with that too. And I really love like I play Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing for over 20 years with the same group of people. So that like really is an inspiration, right, for a lot of the games I create and the style of games that I'm going to be, putting in when I do my company stuff. So, but I'll use like Hero Forge is a great character builder, and a lot of people don't realize that either, because it's really like, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you know what Hero Forge is, but like most people don't know what that is. So you go to heroforge.com, you can get a free account. Of course, I have a pro account. I buy the pro account for everything, but you could do everything with pretty much with a free account also, and you can build all sorts of characters on it. Like there's a million different types of things. Like the possibilities are really endless for what you can create. Humans, elves, werewolf, anything you want to do. And you can make it really cool. And then when you take these things and put them into your games and you set it up the right way in Genially, you can make it look like they're moving, they're talking, they're doing different stuff. And that gives it the look of like a fluid retro video game, right? When you're thinking like arcade games, like the arcade Ninja Turtles coming through and stuff, like retro video game, and they're like, the kids get so impressed, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so easy. I'm literally like copying and pasting a thing and just animating it to like move. But thank you.
Wow, I love that. So cool. So cool. Okay, so we talked a lot about game-based learning and, all the games you create and everything with that. And I know you said that sometimes, like, I guess in the beginning, like, you struggled with, like, making these games, right? You had said.
Yeah.
But have you encountered, like, struggles in the classroom with using these game-based learning games?
So, I mean, of course, the internet gods are not always on your side. So
That is true.
That ends up being a problem. So like, when push comes to shove, I'll stick my hotspot on if I have to. I don't care. I'm like, yo, we are doing this. But yeah, I mean, that's always a problem. Anytime you're reliant on something that's virtual, if the internet goes out, there's not much you can do there. So that, of course, is just an issue that there's like not a lot of solution for, unfortunately. Like there are certain elements of my stuff that I can make it that you don't have to be online for it, that you could take it kind of offline and do. It won't give you like the back end analytics and stuff. My stuff's set up that I could see how long it took them on an activity, how many tried, whatever it is. But I could still have them like play through like certain elements of it without them having to be online. But I think that's definitely one of the biggest issues.
Okay, yeah, but you did find a solution by using your hotspot. So technically, there is
your hotspot is great. Let me tell you.
But yeah, I agree. Yeah, the one thing with technology, like you said, like it doesn't always work the way you want it to. Like the Wi-Fi doesn't go out. Like either something freezes or it glitches or so many things. But I'm glad that you've had, the most difficult thing was just the Wi-Fi going out. So that's, that's
Yeah.
that's a win, I would say, in my book.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing is like, a lot of the kids like I know where I teach especially, like a lot of them like need like a lot of hand holding through things. And I'm also in a population that's like 99% like ELLs, like English language learners and stuff. We have a ton of that in our school. So it ends up sometimes, I think my instructions are clear or whatever, and I have things, and then maybe, and you'll see kids who are more natural gamers, right, are like, yeah, I could totally figure out what to do. But then you'll have kids who don't really game and they get a little bit lost, right? And you have to like kind of explain it to them, and then they get it, right? When you show, you take them through and you show them. But of course, that could always be a problem too, right? When you have the student who's not that accustomed to it and they just like feel a little bit lost at first.
Okay. So, would you say you have like a lot of ELLs in your particular classes?
So in my classes, I teach gen ed classes, but I'll have a lot of former L's. So, but because I teach ninth and 10th grade, they'll have like just tested out recently, right? So there is like still like some like language barriers and things like that. But I think for the most part, but that's what I love about using the technology is that I have found like I do also after school a digital literacy class, and we digital media, and we do like photography, and I teach them how to make these games, right? And we have the 360 camera. I teach them how to take a 360 picture. We put it into ThingLink. They build characters in Hero Forge, and I show them how to build the games and stuff. And I've had kids who don't speak a word of English able to do beautiful things, and because you're showing them and you're showing by doing, right? And they see, and they get it, and I take them through, and it's like it's a beautiful thing because I feel like it does help them see that they can still pick up all of these skills. And for me, giving them the 21st century skills is super important. When I have a student in my class, like more often than not, telling me, looking at their Google Doc and when they're typing an essay and they're like, Miss, how do I get down here? And I'm like, how do you get down where? And they're like, I want to be off this line. And I'm like, do you mean hit the enter key? Like, you don't realize, because we think this is like the tech generation. But no, this is like the I'm on my phone generation, that it corrects everything for you and stuff like that. But yeah, so getting them those skills is important.
Okay. Would you say like you've encountered like any, like in your games, have you encountered like any struggles with like ELLs like not being able to, I guess, like read what you write in, I guess, instructions or anything in there?
So I haven't, as far as I know, but to be fair, I feel like a lot of the kids don't read the instructions in there. Like I always have a thing on there that says like what to do, like a question mark on each thing, and it'll tell you like, oh, press the moon, move it around, and I'll just get, Miss, what do I do on this page, right? Or they'll ask like a group mate or whatever, I'll tell them. But that's across the board. That's not just my L's, right? I feel like it's just like a disconnect with reading instructions. But I do. Unfortunately, Genially doesn't have the translation services. Some of the things I do have, do use translators, and I can though go in and put like, if I know that I have students who are going to need it, I can put like a separate like window within like there's a lot of like tabs and things that you can like link in and stuff, and I can have it come up like in their language or whatever. And I mean, because even like Genially has, you could share your things to the public as well. And there are a ton out there, like mostly, of course, because they're mostly French and Spanish companies, most of them are in French and Spanish. So you have a lot of opportunity there too. So I can put like there's ways to put like embed like links and stuff in there that I could have it when they click it, it'll either read it to them in their language or open up in their language, things like that.
Oh, okay. That's cool. I like that. That's awesome. So I know you said that you have a love for like game-based learning, right? But could you go into more detail on like why you love it so much?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I grew up in the 80s, always big on games, love like nostalgia and just being engaged. And for me, it was really tough, like I have to be really interested in something. Like I love learning. I've always been like, I guess, like a scholar in that, I'd always have my face in a book and, things like that. But I didn't love school. So I actually quit high school when I was 15 years old. I left. And at that point, you couldn't take your GED yet. You had to wait till you were 17. So, like I was a cashier or whatever at a store. And then once I turned 17, I was able to go and get my GED, and then I went into college, and then I got to do what I wanted to do, right? I started as an art major, then I went to journalism, then English, but I wasn't being bogged down with things that were just like boring me to death. And I think it's super important. We talk a lot about social emotional learning, and cultural diversity and all these things, but then, and differentiation. But
Mm-hmm.
we all say, we know, yeah, okay, we've seen it, we've done it, we've been in a million PDs, but to actually put it into play is hard. And, when you have 30, 40 kids sitting in a room, teenagers especially, but at any age, you're not going to get to every one of them. Like, I don't care if you're the best person in the world at differentiation, at whatever it is, like, it's just, you can't be in 100 places at once, right? So I feel like bringing in those elements, and especially when I make them, being able to understand what my kids like and are into and tailoring it to them. So like when I'm like, oh, okay, Junior loves cars. He's obsessed with cars. I'm going to build out this game all around cars. And make that like the background of it, and have it like, oh, now Beowulf is racing to the thing or whatever. You have to put it together, help him build this and stuff like that. So I think that's been really important for me, to be able to engage them. And when I sit in a professional development, I'm worse than the kids, and I understand. I feel their pain. Sometimes I'm standing there and we're going through a lesson and I see some faces and I'm like, oh man, I know where we are because I'm there, and my school's huge on PD, right? And we have every other day at 7 a.m. we have a meeting, and then we have, regular meetings in the afternoon and stuff. And a lot of the times it's like, I've already sat through this, or it's just like so boring. And I sit there and I think, wow, like what I could do to make this more interesting. So like, yeah, it's important. Yeah.
Well, I can really tell that you care so much about your students. So for our final segment of the podcast, let's talk about your game-based learning company, Edventures in Literature. So can you just tell me all the ins and outs about this?
Yeah, so I'm super excited to get this started. I've had people asking me for quite some time now, for a couple of years. Like I said, since COVID, I started getting really into the gaming and the building out the technology. And I'll be in these groups and I share my stuff and like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Where can I buy this? Do you have one for the Crucible or something that I don't teach to my kids or whatever, things like that. And I just really wanted to like put something out there that's really like very comprehensive, because as someone who was looking for games, and things like that, like the reason I had to start making them was because they didn't have them, like not at the level of where I wanted them to be. Like they have like some cool stuff. And even now it's so funny when I look at things, I'm like, oh my God, I thought this was like the coolest thing ever. I'm like, but yeah, so, I really wanted to build something that would be super immersive, especially keeping in mind kids who may not be like a traditional student, kids who, because of course you can use them in your classroom, to help supplement things and stuff like that. But I'm with Adventures in Literature, I'm really thinking about like kids who are like homeschooled or in credit recovery. I taught credit recovery for years. When I first started, I had all like the super seniors, kids that they were like, they're never going to graduate. They've taken the Regents 1,000 times. They're almost 21. They're going to age out. They're taking 5 English classes, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way, right? And they would put them on these programs like, and to try to do credit recovery in these basically like these online textbooks that are insanely boring. And they say that they're really cool, right? Because they have like multiple choice and stuff like that you're on a computer. I'm like, being on a computer doesn't make it, fun. And they're hard. They're really hard. And I just be like, yo, these kids couldn't get through regular classes with teachers in there, and now you want to put them on a computer and have them read Frankenstein by themselves, and it just asks them like these multiple choice questions and stuff, and like they have no idea what they're doing. So that, and like I see like even we get countless PD in my school on all different types of like, they do like Savas learning and my perspectives and what do you call it? What's the other one? Not Castle Learning. Carnegie Learning, right? And it's all these kind of like online textbooks that have like, some of them have like some activities that I guess someone who doesn't ever do anything on virtually would be like, oh wow, but I feel like they're very like, they're not pretty. I put a lot into like, you gotta captivate, right? People are bored. We're in the TikTok era, right? You cannot be, they're not taking this subpar stuff, these kids. So, I wanted to have something out there that they could really immerse themselves in the world. So I start with books, obviously, in like the public domain, right? Because licensing rights are tough and expensive. So you take a book like a Beowulf or any of the Shakespeare books, stuff like that, and you're literally having them play through this book. So it's almost set up like a choose your own ending story, choose your own adventure. When I was younger, I said I always played Dungeons and Dragons. When I was younger, they had these Dungeons and Dragons choose your own adventure books. You'd open up the book and it would be like, okay, now you get to the cave, do you want to make a right? Do you want to make a left? And then you go and it's like, oh, the dragon got you, go back and start over. Oh man, you found the elf who's going to help you. So I kind of wanted to take that element and that role-playing game element into it when building it out. And they play through the book, and by playing through the book, they're also learning it. So they're actually reading the text in there as they go. And, it'll have like, okay, now you've read up to Beowulf about to go fight Grendel's mother. And now, okay, you've reached the mom, right? Now you've heard tale of what, what kind of fighter she is, right? Which weapon are you choosing? Are you taking the sword, or are you going to go this one like, barehanded, right? And you go barehanded and it's like, uh-oh, like, sorry, that was her son Grendel is barehanded. You're like, now, you better pray to Odin. And then when you pray to Odin, because Odin leaves him the giant's sword on the wall, and Beowulf looks over and sees it, right? And the line comes up from Beowulf, that they blessed him and sent the sword. So it's like all these kind of like fun things that you could play through, but you're fully immersed in the story itself. You're like actually the characters.
Oh, wow. That is so cool because, and I'm so happy you're making this, because there is nothing like that I can like even really compare it to. I mean, the closest thing which is not even, this is like a 1% close to what you're doing, is I teach preschool, so way different than high school. But
not that different. Yeah.
So like during lunchtime, I'll put on a story, like a virtual story, through this chat. Well, it's on YouTube, and it's through the YouTube channel is called Vooks with a V. And so it's like they'll either create their own stories, but as it's telling the story to the kids, like the pictures are like moving, so it's like you're tricking them to thinking that they're like watching like an episode of something, but they're really just like watching a book kind of play out type of thing. And they'll either make their own story, or they'll use like the popular stories, like, that are around today, like the Mitten, for example. So I know it's like they don't have the they can't play the character and go through the story, but that's the closest thing I can think of that is similar to what you're doing. But I'm so excited to see this unfold.
Oh, me too. No, I'm really excited. It's just that, like the time component to go into something like this, you want to build it out, and you want to build it out well, and I need time. I need time to, of course, I have my visualization process, right, of what I want to do, how I want it to look. And then I'm very particular, I have to build my own characters the way I want them to look a certain way, and, things like that, and have them go through and have it be like a really genuine experience for them. And I think one of the big things when it comes to game-based learning is you have to be very careful that you're not falling into the trap of making it more about the game than about the learning, right? There has to be, right, the learning, the objectives, like they have to be met. That's really important, right? The standards, are they getting the information, everything? Now, it's great, it's fun, right? It's engaging. You want to make it that way. And that's why I also make sure that the games that I create within it, the activities, do make you like think, right? It's a lot of like puzzle based and things like that, logic and reasoning, because that's also part of the learning as well. It's not just necessarily the content, but I think that can end up being a problem. When I spoke to, there's kind of a veteran teacher in my school, and he's like, oh man, this stuff is really cool. He's like, I'd love to learn. So he's like, when I did my ed tech degree, when Google was really like becoming a thing, right? And they had, he's like, but even then, he's like, I found like the kids, it was just more about like the game, and they weren't really like learning from it, right? It was about playing. He's like, so I gave that up or whatever. He's like, I'd love to learn what you do, but I'm retiring in 2 years, so I'm good, right? So I get it. But yeah, I think that ends up being something that you just have to kind of like keep in mind. So, and that takes time, right? When you're looking at it and you're building it out. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think it's going to be really fun. And I love, I have my kids, or they test everything out for me, and and they tell
There
me
you go.
trials. Yeah.
So can I call it a software, or what would you describe it as?
See, I don't know what they call that nowadays. So like, because it's not like back in the day, like software was like, oh yeah, I got like a CD-ROM with like the program on it, right?
Yes,
and stuff like that. Or
and
like
the floppy disks.
Yeah, Microsoft software. Like, I'm not sure. I guess it would be more like a platform.
Okay.
Right? Like a learning platform, I guess it would be, right? Because it would be like a site that you could go to, like download like the pieces, and you own that piece. Yeah.
Okay. So would this platform like be available to anyone, or would there be some sort of like payment required to utilize it, or have you not thought that far yet, or
So I mean, I'm always conflicted because of course, like as a teacher, I know how expensive everything gets and stuff like that. And I pay my dues. I mean, I buy everything, and I am not I mean, listen, times are tough. I live in New York City, but for me, that's part of enrichment. It's what I love doing. So I'm like, whatever. And I love the kids, and I'll buy them licenses to things and stuff online. I'm like, I don't care. But yeah, so there has to be some type of monetary though, right? Because otherwise you're not going to afford to make everything, right?
Right, of course.
So I mean, I know they have like, like Teachers Pay Teachers has like their system, and people always ask me like, oh, do you want to make stuff and sell it on Teachers Pay Teachers? And I'm like, I don't know. I'd rather just, do it separately and see, I could throw stuff up on Teachers Pay Teachers also. But because I things are so specific to what people are teaching or what people need. There's like endless books you could need, right? Or be that teach, right? So it's hard to cater to every single person. So I would make my kind of core set of things that I know, like, and I ask around, what's the most popular? What do we see the most often? Starting with the public domain, and then you'd have to work out, anything else copyright wise. But yeah, because I would love to say like, oh, I just have a site like, adventures in like education and eventually, right? And within that, you could click on adventures in literature, adventures in music, adventures in history, adventures in math, right? Like that would be like the end goal, like the epic, like adventures empire, right? You get the team together and they put the stuff up there. And you have like kind of an open site where you can do like a membership. But I think to start, it would have to be more of like like a paper product, or I can make you something specific if you want. I have to see kind of, I know what I like to do and what I like to make, and I know what people have asked me for, and they offer to like pay me for it. But I don't know, for me it's more about like making the content and putting something out there they'll like. I just have to kind of figure out money wise what that's going to have to look like. Yeah, so that part's still in development, but the content and stuff, yeah, that's where my heart is. I need a money manager. That I'm not good at.
You gotta hire an advisor.
Yeah.
Okay. If you had to estimate, when do you think your company will officially launch?
So I'm getting all of the paperwork for everything together now. I already secured like, like the email address, the Instagram, the YouTube, all that stuff. So I have like the names and everything situated. I'm just putting, I want to have more like things out there like ready to go. I don't want to just like open this up with like a couple of things. So I was saying I'm within the year, we should be good to go. Because I'm just finalizing a couple of things, making some extra things. Of course, I'm doing a second master's now. So that's been taking time. The title educator program for the state, that's taking time. I teach 1 million hours a week, so I'm trying to like fit stuff. But yeah, within the year is the goal. And my husband's always like, just like, he's always been like an entrepreneur and self-employed or whatever. And he's like, just go, like he would have done it already, right? He's like, just do it out there. You're fine. People are already asking this and that. And I'm like, oh, I want to have like a little bit more situation. Yeah, but within the year, it'll definitely be ready to go.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see what this will look like. And trust me, I will be telling everyone about it because everybody needs to know about this because this is an incredible thing that you're doing. And I hope you know that, which I'm sure you do.
Well, thank you. And I really love to teach people too. Obviously, I'm not a math teacher. I'm not a preschool teacher, right? Like I don't know what you guys are teaching. I don't know like what you need, So when I first started doing this, I was like, man, I wish there was someone out there that I could just like buy like a professional development from or a webinar series or something from, right? To learn and to see like, so I'm also, as part of this, I'm going to be putting out that as well, like courses on how to use the different programs, where to find the materials, where to find free materials, where to find paid for materials, things like that. Because I think that that's a valuable tool, because I think one of the biggest problems is that I've encountered is when you find someone who's good at making things like this, they kind of hoard it like the dragon, right? You don't want to share it. Right? You're like, no, like that's my money maker, or that's my knowledge. I worked so hard to get that knowledge. But it's like, I'm like, man, I wish everyone wanted to do stuff like this, and I would love to teach you, right, how to do this, right? But you got, and or of course, I could do it for you if you tell me what you need. But I like to share that and see like, what do you want to do? Where's those creative minds out there? I'll show you. What do you want me to show you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. I'll be right there watching those videos. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I feel like this was very beneficial for the both of us, and I feel like I learned so much through you and the company that you're working on.
No, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about stuff like this.